Myth number 2, an economic crisis means a housing crisis. That is not accurate. An economic crisis is an economic crisis. A housing crisis is a housing crisis. They're two different things. Now, they tend to be linked together. Yes, there's typically a correlation between the two, but just because there's an economic crisis does not mean there will be a housing crisis. Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm John Darden, and this is the Elite Realtor Experience, a podcast dedicated to agents ready to take the next step in becoming elite. I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of talking about coronavirus. Unfortunately, this is just the reality we live in currently. So what I want to do today, as COVID-19 ramps up in our country, and as the recession continues to hit, although we've had 2 good days in the stock market, the Dow rebounding a bit, I want to not continue the conversation, but what I want to do today is discuss 5 myths and 5 facts. 5 things that people are saying that are just not accurate, and then 5 things that I think are factual for us in our real estate industry moving forward. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. These are not necessarily in any particular order, but I want to start with this because I think we need to immediately jump into this. Myth number 1, coronavirus, COVID-19 is no big deal. I think blessings on you if you're doing your best to just bury your head and pretend like everything's okay. But whatever route you want to look at this, whether you want to look at this from a health standpoint, you want to look at this from a financial standpoint, an economic standpoint, a housing standpoint, this is a big deal. And it's time for many of you to recognize reality and see that it is an absolute myth to state that coronavirus, COVID-19, however you're calling it, whatever you're calling it, saying that it's not a big deal is an absolute myth. There are, and these stats are from this morning, as of today, for every 10 people that need a ventilator, we have 1 ventilator for them. This is worldwide. For every 10 people that need a ventilator to stay alive, directly because of coronavirus, we have 1 ventilator. 10 to 1. That's not a good ratio. From a straight up health standpoint, it is a big deal. And unfortunately, what tends to happen in our society is if it's not directly affecting us, then to us it's overreaction, it's hysteria, it's people just being stupid. But when it directly affects us is when all of a sudden we jump ship and begin to pound our fist of, oh, this is a big deal and we need to pay attention to this. And I think that that's an unfortunate reality. For example, we don't tend to think that texting and driving is a big deal until somebody that we love is directly affected negatively by texting and driving, whether that individual was texting or driving or somebody else was texting and driving. It's not a big deal to us until something directly affects us. And so many people are pounding the pavement of this just being hysteria and overblown. And yes, I mean, the media is making this significantly a bigger deal. I say bigger deal. I've cautioned when I say that. Just creating hysteria, because that's what the media does, because they want you to consume their content. While the media is absolutely trying to create panic and fear, I agree with that. It still is something to be worried about, and it still is something to be serious about and to take seriously. And we have got to stop, just because maybe we're not directly affected yet or somebody we love is not directly affected, we have got to stop saying that it's not a big deal, because it is a big deal. It's having a drastic effect on our economy, which will then affect housing. And we're going to talk about another myth tied to that here in just a second. In fact, let's just go ahead and jump right into that, actually. So myth number 1, coronavirus is not a big deal. That's not true. That's a myth. Myth number 2, an economic crisis means a housing crisis. That is not accurate. An economic crisis is an economic crisis. A housing crisis is a housing crisis. They're two different things. Now, they tend to be linked together. Yes, there's typically a correlation between the two, but just because there's an economic crisis does not mean there will be a housing crisis. Many of us think back to the 2008, 2009, 2010 market, which was both an economic crisis and a housing crisis. Yes. And I'm no economist. I don't have a PhD in economy, so I'm not an authority in this arena. However, I sold and lived through the previous economic and housing crisis, so I have some experience, some real-world street smarts experience, and I think that can translate to today. One of the things that is very different today than it was 12 years ago when we were first stepping into recession back then is that we had a string of 6 or 7 years worth of very, very poor financial decisions across every major industry, across governments, really from top to bottom, very, very poor financial decisions that led to the economic crisis. We're in the midst of an economic crisis currently because of a pandemic. Now, an economic correction was coming. There's no doubt about it. We've had 9-ish years, 8 or 9 years of a really, really solid, great economy. So a correction was coming, some sort of a correction. A pandemic really just hit the gas pedal. I mean, it absolutely chunked gas and lit the match at the exact same time. So we are not in the midst at this point of a housing crisis because housing has been solid for a long time. Because post-recession of 2008, there were a lot of regulations, federal regulations placed on real estate, on how appraisals are done, how lending is done, that would keep us from getting into the type of housing crisis that we saw back in 2008, 2009, 2010. Because there were a lot of very, very poor financial decisions made during that time, which led to a housing crisis along with an economic crisis. So a lot of times people will link the two together, an economic crisis and a housing crisis. That's just not accurate. We're not in a housing crisis. At this point, we're not in a housing crisis. Now, again, things change hour by hour. So next week could be completely different. I don't foresee that. Real estate is down, no doubt. Sales are down. Residential home sales are down. You can't ignore that fact. But an economic crisis and housing crisis being the same thing is a myth. They are two separate things. They're two separate issues. Yes, there's some connectivity, but we are not in a housing crisis at this point. For many of you, real estate is shut down. You cannot operate your business, although NAR is working very hard for us to make real estate deemed an essential business. Many states I know have passed state legislation stating that real estate is an essential industry, which I firmly believe real estate's an essential industry. You need food, water, air, and shelter. Those are the four things. We provide shelter. We are the pipe that makes shelter happen. So real estate is, in my opinion, an essential industry, no doubt about it. NAR is working for you. I digress. All that to say, again, back to the point, it's a myth to state that an economic crisis and a housing crisis are the same thing. They are not. We are headed towards an economic crisis, no doubt. $2 trillion stimulus package was passed by the Senate this morning at 1:30 a.m. And $2 trillion flooded into the economy means the economy is in crisis. But housing is not. Housing has slowed, yes, but housing is not in crisis. That is myth number 2. Myth number 3, the government will save you. I just mentioned last night that a $2 trillion stimulus package was passed by the Senate at 1:30 a.m. This does not mean the government is going to save your life. That is false. That is a myth. It is not the government's job to protect you. I'm sorry. I know that is going to very much go against what you believe the government's job is here to do, but that is not what the government is here to do. And if the government is trying to claim both parties, we're not going to make this a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan issue. Both parties, if you rely on them to save your life, then you're in trouble. You have the wrong mindset. The government will not save you. That is a massive myth that many of you have got to get over in your head. And we're going to get to the factual side of that here in just a minute. The government, God bless them. God bless our wonderful folks that run our government. Their job, quite frankly, is to get reelected. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but that's just reality. And it's time for us to face some hard truths. what do most politicians try to do? They try to get reelected. And for many of them, their thought process in passing this stimulus bill is, if I say yes to this, will my constituents reelect me? Will they use this against me in reelection? That's the thought process of the vast majority of our politicians in our government. And if you're relying on people who are thinking that way to save you, you're in trouble. We'll get to the factual side of this here in just a minute. But it is a myth, a flat out myth to say that the government will save you. They will not. Now, we need to listen to our government. We need to listen to some of the things that they're instructing us to do from a health and safety standpoint. But if you're relying on the government to feed you, to clothe you, to keep you financially afloat, and you're a well-abled individual that can take care of yourself, and you're relying on the government, you're in trouble. You got the wrong mindset. You need to get your head out of your butt and recognize the government will not save you. So that's myth number 3. Myth number 4. Virtual tours will save my real estate business. I'm sorry. Virtual tours are not going to save your business. I know that that's what everyone is shifting to right now. I mean, that's all I see on Facebook and Instagram are virtual tours. And I say virtual tours, I mean, not even done well, just like going live and holding up your phone and like making me kind of sick to my stomach and dizzy because you're not even holding the phone steady. That is not going to get people to continue to buy or sell real estate. It's something that we're all kind of hoping is going to keep us moving forward, but at the end of the day, it's not going to move us forward. Virtual tours, when done well, meaning you're spending money on a professional to come in and create an actual 3D virtual tour, that is very different. That can help you. That can assist in changing the condition of the mindset of a buyer to potentially purchase your home. But if you're just walking through on Instagram and doing this, which you need to be doing, that's brand building, yes, and that's conditioning buyers to change the way they think about buying a home. That's very different than saying that doing this right here, hey, check out this kitchen, check out this bathroom, thinking that is going to save your business is a myth. One of the things we really have to do over the next few months, because if you're listening to anybody from the CDC, and again, not listening to the government, but listening to scientists and people that actually know what they're talking about, and that's I'm not making a partisan statement. I'm not making a political statement. I'm just saying listen to the experts in the experts' fields. Don't listen to me from an economic standpoint. Go listen to economists. Don't listen to me from a health standpoint. I'm not a doctor. Go listen to scientists and doctors. But if you're paying attention to what experts are saying, this is not going to be a 2-week issue and we're back open for business everywhere. We're in this for the long haul. Now, if we will do what we're supposed to do, then we can curb this whole thing a lot quicker and get over this economic crisis that we're in. But we're in this for the long haul. We're in this for many, 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 many months, maybe even longer than that. So what we have to do is recondition the mind of a buyer to be willing to purchase or at least put contracts on homes sight unseen. Because people are nervous to go in other people's homes because I don't know where you've been and I don't know if you've got coronavirus and you may not even know if you've got coronavirus. I don't want to infect my family. I have elderly parents or I have at-risk children or whatever. So buyers are thinking of their safety first, which is smart. I mean, I get it. Back to our evolutionary roots, we care about our safety and our survival. And that's what we're doing right now. We're kind of going back to that, our animalistic instinct of survival, which is understandable. We're gonna take care of ourselves, protect our own, and that makes sense. That has continued our humanity forward for a long time. But thinking that just holding up your phone and walking around and showing people a home or going Facebook Live and just kind of very shakily, because I watch what you do. You don't do it well. You don't hold your phone well. You don't have a stable hand. And so you thinking that that's going to get people to still buy homes is a myth. It's going to take time to shift the way that people change their habits of buying a home. Lucky for us, our society has been conditioned to be willing to purchase things virtually. I've said this a lot recently. The last two vehicles I bought, I signed the paperwork before I even saw the car. And I was okay with that. I was cool with that. I buy my groceries online. I buy everything online. And I'm conditioned to virtually purchase, which is a good thing. Most of your buyers are conditioned to virtually purchase. However, they're not conditioned necessarily to virtually purchase a home yet. That is not something, unless you're an investor. Investors are okay with that if the numbers make sense. But the vast majority of you are working with families, and they're not conditioned to purchase virtually at this point in time. It's going to take time for our brains to be purchased or conditioned to purchase homes virtually. And that is also going to take us ramping up our quality of virtual tours. I used to be very dead set against things like Matterport, because when the market's good and there's not a pandemic floating, the purpose of marketing on a home is to make people intrigued enough to go tour the home in person. And that's what good marketing did. And so I didn't like things like Matterport because it gave away all the goods, and therefore people would make their decision based off the Matterport 3D virtual tour. When the economy is good and there's not a pandemic floating around, I still believe that. But in our current state, we have got to, in my opinion, make people extremely comfortable with a property that even though they haven't seen it yet, they'll be willing to put an offer on it. And one of the ways that we do that is with legitimate 3D virtual tours, legitimate professional quality, not you walking around with your phone. You're not a videographer. You're not an expert on 3D tours. And so I think we've got to get over thinking that holding up your phone and walking people through virtual open houses is going to get the job done. It's not. It's going to take quality, professional 3D tours, things that actually look very, very good, full disclosure on properties, flowy ad copy, and descriptions that are actually going to get people to purchase virtually. I need to speed this up. So myth number 4, virtual tours are going to save my business. They're not. Not the way that you're doing them right now, at least. It's going to take time to recondition the mind of buyers to purchase homes virtually. Myth number 5, and then we'll move on to our facts. Myth number 5, when this blows over, it will be business as usual. That is a complete and utter myth. What's happening right now is going to completely and totally, utterly change the course of how real estate is done and who the big players in real estate are, who the people that are going to survive and thrive post-pandemic. For them, it's not business as usual. This is going to utterly change the way that things are done. They're going to change the way and the wave of the future for real estate professionals. And that's good news for most of you, because for a lot of you, you've got big players in your market that have dominated the industry for 10, 15, 20 years potentially. Those folks typically are not willing to change the way they do their business. They're a massive ship, and so steering that ship is hard to do. And changing the course of that ship is very, very challenging. And most of them are going to be unwilling to do it. So the good news for a lot of you, for most of you listening to this, for most of you in the real estate profession, there's a huge opportunity here for you. And we'll get into this on the fact side here in just a minute. There's a massive opportunity for you to become the next big player, because business as usual, the way that it was before this, is not going to be a reality. Everything is going to change. This is going to change the face of our society as a whole, but it will also change the face of real estate industry. It is not going to be business as usual. So many of you are hoping that when we get past this, we'll go back to the way that things were before. It's not going to happen. Things are going to drastically change, and new players are going to step up into the game. When we get to the fact side of this, I'm going to tell you how you can be one of the ones that survives and thrives after this. Okay, 5 facts. We got to go through this quickly. Fact number 1. Agents will get out of the business. over the next 6 months. A lot of agents in your market are going to run away from real estate because it's not going to be a viable means of income for them anymore. And that's not a bad thing. I hate to say that, but that's not a bad thing. There are, and I said this on last week's podcast, 3 types of agents. There are full-time agents, part-time agents, and hobbyists. And the hobbyists are going to be the ones that get out first. And that's great. That's good. That's fine. That needs to happen. Your hobbyist agents who just do a couple of deals a year, and this is just extra cash flow on the side for them. We need them out of the industry. And I welcome that. That's a fact. Agents will get out of the business. The number of realtors in your market will drop over the next 6 months. And the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to be one of those ones that gets out, or are you going to be one of the ones that survives and makes it past this? So that's fact number 1. Fact number 2 is that it is going to be significantly harder to sell real estate over the next 6 months. That's a fact. We just talked about a minute ago that virtual tours are not going to save you in this industry. They're not. And it's going to be a lot more challenging as people are less willing to go step inside of other people's homes. And sellers are not going to be quite as willing to allow showings. We're going to have to get very creative on how showings are done and how people get inside of homes to view properties. We're going to have to get creative on that, which all of this means it's going to be harder. Days on market are going to increase. The number of buyers in the next 6 months are going to decrease. We're not going to have as many people willing to go into other people's homes right now. It's just a fact. I mean, when the CDC is telling you to social distance and limit where you go, asking people to walk into another person's home goes directly against what the CDC is asking us to do. So it's going to be significantly harder to sell real estate in the next few months, which is directly linked to fact number 1, which was people are going to get out of the industry. So it is a fact that people are going to be less willing to go view properties as this continues to go on, which means it's going to be harder to buy and sell homes. Our industry, what we do as a career and a profession, is going to get more challenging, which is why, again, more people will get out of the business, which is also why, linked back to myth, virtual tours are not going to save your business, but it's why we've got to do our virtual tours in a much more quality fashion with professional individuals that know what they're doing. Okay, fact number 3. The economy is going to continue to be in crisis until coronavirus is over. Once again, we've got to get our head out of the sand and stop doing that. If you're just listening and you're not watching, I put my fingers in my ears, which I probably shouldn't do. Sorry, CDC. The economy is not going to rebound until coronavirus is over, which also means if you will be smart about what you're doing, then we will get past coronavirus much quicker. The economy, the rebound, is linked to how you're living your day-to-day life. And if you're living as if this is no big deal, then that's just going to perpetuate the economic crisis, which will perpetuate all the issues that we have in the industry. So this is my plea to you to please be smart. I mean, I know you've got to still buy and sell homes, which means you've got to still get face-to-face with people, and you've still got to go on showings. Be smart, be safe, protect yourself, protect your clients. There's all kinds of different ways that we can do that at this point, and we're way past time on our podcast now, so I can't get into those today. But the link to coronavirus still running rampant in our world and the economy continuing to trend down it's inexplicable. The correlation is there. As long as coronavirus is going around, the economy will still be in crisis. As soon as coronavirus is gone, the economy will rebound like that, because it's not been set up like it was in 2008 with 6-7 years of terrible economic decisions. Again, worldwide in all industries. This recession, this economic crisis is brought on by a pandemic and not by terrible financial decisions that have been made recently, which means the economy will rebound very, very quickly once we get past this, but it will not rebound while coronavirus is still going on. That's just a fact. I've got to speed this up. Fact number 4. this is a direct response to the myth that the government is going to save you, which is a myth. The fact is, you can get yourself through this, and you should get yourself through this. You are strong enough. You are smart enough. You are intelligent enough. You have everything you need inside of you already to get yourself and your family and your loved ones through what we're going through right now. That is a fact. You have got everything it takes to get through this. Now, you need to be smart about it. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm drastically reducing any expense that is not absolutely necessary. One of the ways that I am going to survive what's going on right now is if it's not an absolutely necessary expense, if I don't absolutely have to have it, then I'm eliminating it right now at this point. A lot of creature comforts, things that I really, really enjoyed over the last few years, they're not necessary right now, so I'm going to get rid of it. And that's one of the ways that I'm going to get myself through this is to reduce my number of expenses, my amount of expenses, so that I can survive this and then thrive on the back end. I'm not relying on the government. I mean, cool, I'm going to get a $1,200 check from the government. How far is that going to go? Not very, very far. So the government's not going to take care of me. Who's going to? Nobody but me. So I've got to step up to the plate, get off my butt, stop being lazy, and take responsibility and ownership for what's happening right now and take care of myself. The only person that's going to save me is me. The only person that's going to continue to push my life and my business forward is me. Now, yes, depending on what this $2 trillion stimulus plan looks like, is there potential for some aid? Yes, it looks like there will be loans that we as independent contractors can take out to help us during the next few months, and that's great. But at the end of the day, still, the only person that's going to save you is you. And you yourself can get through this. You can. If you are in real estate, you have entrepreneurial mindset. You have a confident mindset. You have a no matter what mindset. And that's what you have to dig deep into right now. You have to dig deep into who you are at your core, which is a person, an individual that is confident, is self-assured, and is willing to take massive risks to do something crazy like get into real estate, which has an 87% failure rate. So if you dove into this, understanding what you were getting yourself into, then you are a rare breed of human being, which means you yourself have enough to get through this in you. Now you have to dig deep. You have to probably dig deeper than maybe potentially you've ever had to dig into yourself before. And that's fine. Great. This is a wonderful challenge for you. What a great time for you to prove to yourself that you actually can do this. But you yourself, you can get through this. You shouldn't rely on anything or anybody else but yourself. And the beautiful thing about that is you have everything you need to survive. And here's the last fact, and we'll wrap this up. I said a minute ago, when this blows over, it's a myth to think that it's business as usual. So here's the response to that. Whoa, do I have more than 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do. I am so sorry. I can't count. 5 myths and 6 facts. So here's fact number 5, and then we'll jump directly into fact number 6. Fact number 5, the smart are working harder than ever. We can blow through this very quickly because I think it speaks for itself. Most people who are going to suffer in this time, they're sitting back and they're watching Netflix all day long, and they're getting lazy, and they're eating because they're bored, and they're getting fat. So physically, they're not taking care of themselves. Mentally, they're not taking care of themselves. And business-wise, they're certainly not taking care of themselves. The smart people who are going to survive and thrive this are working harder right now than ever before. While you're being lazy and you're watching Netflix and you're binging on Hulu, the smart people, the people who are going to thrive and build a lot of wealth, are working harder now than they ever have. Working harder on themselves, working harder mentally, physically, working harder in their business. They're being very, very smart about what they do. So that's myth or fact number 5, which links to fact number 6, and this is the final one. Those who already have or are focusing on building their personal brands will be the new leaders on the back end of this. I said a minute ago that it's a myth to think that it's going to be business as usual for so many real estate professionals, especially the successful ones that have been successful for a decade or so, without having to really dive into social media and digital marketing, building personal brands online on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and TikTok and Snapchat and all these different platforms. They're going to suffer on the back end of this because everything's going to change. But those who already have a dynamite personal brand or are focused on building and creating their personal brand, enhancing their personal brand, growing their personal brand, becoming the trusted expert in their local market through social media, they're the ones who on the back end of this will be the new leaders of our economy, the new leaders in our real estate market, the new movers and shakers of their local communities from a market standpoint. If you're building your brand currently by creating and putting out content that offers people hope, that educates people on the real estate market, that is pushing people to continue to be their best selves, and you become a reliable resource for all kinds of different things, whether it's inspiration, motivation, education, entertainment, humor. If you will begin to look at your business and specifically your social media following, your Instagram following, your Facebook following, LinkedIn, whatever you're on, if you will begin to look at them as your audience and you are somewhat on stage here, and you begin to offer value and entertainment and inspiration and education to the people that follow you as if they're sitting in the audience and you're on stage, if you will begin to view yourself as that during this time, this next 3, 4, 6, maybe 8, 9, 12-month time that we're going through this economic crisis and this pandemic, then on the back end, your brand will be big enough and important enough and valuable enough to kick out these old players who've been dominating your real estate industry for 10 to 15 years, have no idea what a personal brand is, have absolutely no idea how to do anything on social media or digital marketing. That's a world that eludes them. They will fade away into oblivion, and you will be part of the new crop of individuals that steps up and begins to dominate your market because you have separated yourself as a resource and a valuable individual for your people. And if people can link to you right now on a personal, emotional level during what is probably the scariest time of most people's lives, then on the back end of this, when it comes to something that will seem as simple as real estate, they'll absolutely use you to buy or sell a home. That will seem like beans. And you, during this time, have become such a valuable resource to people. You've educated them. You've entertained them. You've humored them. You have added value to their lives on your social platforms, which doesn't cost you a dang thing. Then on the back end of this, once you've built your brand up or continue to build your brand like you've been doing for those of you that have been smart, real estate, people choosing you to buy or sell a home will be simple. Those are the people that are going to thrive on the back end of this, not those that think that when we're past this, it's just business as usual. So those are your 5 myths and your 6 facts. I thought it was 5 and 5. So let me quickly recap your 5 myths. Virtual tours will save your business. They will not. Coronavirus is no big deal. That's a myth. It is. The economic crisis means a housing crisis. It does not. Those two are not necessarily linked. The government will save you. That's a myth. When this blows over, it will be business as usual. That's a myth. Here are your 6 facts. Fact number 1, agents will get out of the business during this time. And you've got to be one of the ones that does not. Fact number 2, the economy will continue to be in crisis until coronavirus is over. That's a fact. Fact number 3, it will be harder to sell real estate now more than ever in the history of our industry. Fact number 4, you can get through this yourself. You have enough gumption and confidence and everything you need inside of you to get through this and not rely on the government. Number 5, the smart people are working harder now more than ever. They're not lazy. And finally, those who already have a personal brand or are continuing to push their personal brand and build their personal brand during this time will be the new leaders in your market when we're past this. This was a lot of information and way longer than I intended it to be, but hopefully there are enough nuggets of wisdom in here or knowledge or something valuable for you to take away and begin to implement in your business immediately or just your personal life during this time. We will make it through this, but understand the myths and step straight into the facts. See you on the next one.